Boston is a major American city, but for some of us, it can feel like a small town. After Boston's acting mayor, Kim Janey, appeared on this program in April, my cousin Holland O'Donnell told me that her father, my cousin Kirk O'Donnell, was co-captain of his high school football team with Kim Janey's father, Cliff Janey, in 1964 at America's oldest public school, Boston Latin School. City Councilor Andrea Campbell is running for mayor against Kim Janey in a field of front-running candidates that, for the first time in Boston history, does not include a white man. My father knew Andrea Campbell's grandfather. He loved that man. And my father made history with Andrea Campbell's father, Alvin Campbell. April 25th, 1963, was a good time to be an Irish Bostonian in Washington, D.C., with John Kennedy still in the White House, and our local Congressman, John McCormick, as Speaker of the House. But it was a terrible time to be a black defendant in any American court. Andrea Campbell's father was in federal prison that day, doing 25 years for bank robbery, and my father was in Washington that day to get him out of prison. It was my first day in Washington. I was 11 years old. My father had gone from being a Boston police officer to a lawyer, and I sat in the front row of the United States Supreme Court that day, watching him try to convince Chief Justice Earl Warren and the rest of the court that the FBI manipulated the eyewitness testimony in Alvin Campbell's trial. It was the second time my father argued this case to the court. 3 years earlier, the court sent the case back to the trial court for further review. In his first argument to the Supreme Court, my father described the problem with the eyewitness testimony this way.
My name is Saeed Abdi Kareem. I'm running for Boston City Council at large. I was resettled in this great city 27 years ago as a refugee. I lived in 4 Boston public housings, and I attended Boston public schools. I'm a father, and my kids attend Boston public schools. I'm an engineer by trade and a social entrepreneur. I know how to fix things and develop people. I'm known to be a very hard worker, and I'll work hard for you. On September 14th, I hope to earn one of your 4 at-large votes. I'm number 4 on the ballot. Thank you so much.
Dominic Stoller went in that courtroom and identified 3 defendants, positive and partial. The summary of Toomey, the FBI agent. He said, I never saw a third person in the bank.
3 black defendants got convicted of bank robbery without the jury knowing that the key eyewitness in the case, in his first interview with the FBI, said there were only 2 bank robbers. After his second argument to the Supreme Court on that spring day in 1963, my father walked my brother Michael and I across the street to the Capitol to visit our local congressman, but since the Speaker of the House was busy and couldn't see us, one of his lieutenants in his leadership team, Congressman Tip O'Neill, who represented the congressional district my mother grew up in, took us to the congressional dining room for a cup of coffee. Everyone had already had lunch, and we were the only people in the dining room. My father ordered coffee, and when Tip O'Neill asked me what I wanted, I said, strawberry ice cream. Tip ordered the same thing. I remember the white tablecloth, I remember the bowl, I remember the spoon, and the 3 scoops of strawberry ice cream that Tip and I each had. And I remember what it felt like a month later when the Supreme Court's opinion was issued and we learned that my father had won the day. He beat President Kennedy's Solicitor General Archibald Cox, and Alvin Campbell got out of prison. And I felt like I was a witness to history. I wish my cousin Kirk, who taught me so much, were still with us to witness the history being made in Boston this year with his football co-captain's daughter, now serving as the first woman acting mayor of Boston, the first black mayor of Boston. Kirk O'Donnell served as deputy mayor in that same city hall in the 1970s. I wish my father were still with us so he could see what Alvin Campbell's daughter has achieved. Andrea Campbell was born in 1982 when her father would still have been serving that 25-year sentence in prison if the Supreme Court had not ruled in his favor. Andrea Campbell graduated from the best public high school in America, Boston Latin School, then Princeton University, and then the UCLA School of Law. She became the first Black woman elected city council president. My father would be in awe of Andrea Campbell and what she has achieved. I wish he could meet her. Joining us now is Andrea Campbell, Democratic candidate for mayor of Boston. She is currently the Boston City Councilor representing District 4, which is right beside District 3, where I grew up. Thank you very much for joining us tonight. This is really very special for me to be meeting you this way. This is really a great moment for me, and I wish my father could see this. I want to go straight to the... Let's get to the issues that you're facing in this campaign, and beginning with what may be the most urgent issue of the day, which is the Delta variant of COVID-19. Boston is not, it has a big public school system with all those elementary school kids that we're all worried about, but it may be the biggest college town in America. You're going to be flooded with college kids coming in the fall. What does Boston have to do in the face of the Delta variant?
It's simple. We have to continue to get folks vaccinated, and particularly focusing on communities of color and those harder to reach communities and vulnerable populations. Right now, we're doing a lot of that work in the community. It's, of course, very unfortunate and deeply disappointing to hear our acting mayor's recent remarks comparing pushing for vaccination and proof of vaccination to slavery. And so I've called that out and to say we cannot perpetuate misinformation or push information that just doesn't make sense. It's our responsibility not to have misinformation out there, but to make sure that folks in our communities have correct information, get vaccinated, because we know it saves lives. And that's the only way we're going to continue to protect residents in the city of Boston going forward.
Let's listen to what Acting Mayor Kim Janey said about that.
I want to take a moment to address the comments about slavery and birtherism I made the other day. I wish I had not used those analogies because they took away from the important issue of ensuring that our vaccination and public health policies are implemented with fairness and equity. If vaccine passports were imposed today with a government mandate to ban unvaccinated residents from venues like restaurants or gyms, that would shut out nearly 40% of East Boston and 60% of Mattapan.
What is your reaction to that?
She has it terribly wrong. We are pushing for folks to get vaccinated and using all the tools in our toolkit to do just that, whether it is incentivizing residents. We know from the New York City model of requiring folks to have proof of vaccination, they've seen a 40% uptick in folks getting vaccinated. That's what we want, so that they can, of course, go to our schools, go to restaurants, go to bars, and we can continue to open up our economy. But if we do not get folks vaccinated, we will be making a grave mistake. And so the misinformation and that rhetoric is not helpful. And I have to keep stressing this point. I live in Mattapan right now, which, as you know, is a larger community of color. It has one of the lowest vaccination rates in the whole entire city of Boston. So there's a collective effort to change that. And so we need information to get out. We do not need misinformation. And we have to remind folks this is critically important. Otherwise, we will not continue to be able to open our economy in the city of Boston.
What is your top issue in this campaign other than COVID-19, if we can say that's separable from other issues?
Housing affordability is too expensive to live in the city of Boston, and so I have a tremendous track record on making sure that folks have access to homeownership opportunities and all the things they would need to be able to afford to live in this city. Policing reform is a major topic of discussion. That is near and dear to me because for me, it's this work, as you mentioned in your opening remarks, it's always been about breaking generational cycles of inequity in the city of Boston and criminalization. And so that is a critical issue. And then ensuring that every resident, whether they are born in Boston or just got here this morning, are afforded the same opportunity I had growing up in the city of Boston. Because this city, on the one hand, gave me everything. The life torn apart by incarceration that allowed me to go to Princeton University and be successful. But on the flip side, failed my twin brother, who died while in the custody of a state prison at the age of 29. And so the question has always been, how do we change that? How do two twins born and raised in the city of Boston have such different life outcomes? So we have a lot of work to do in the city of Boston to ensure that every resident has access to the same opportunity, regardless of their neighborhood or their demographic, or if they got here this morning or if they're native born.
How did you do it? How did you get to where you are with all the challenges that you faced growing up?
I had access to excellent schools. I went to 5 excellent Boston public schools, including Boston Latin School. I had excellent teachers. I had mentors. I had jobs as a young person. I had access to social emotional supports. You name it. Incredible opportunity that allowed me to develop a sense of resiliency, of course. And without my biological parents, who are both deceased, including my biological grandparents, to go off and be successful. And that picture that you see, that is my aunt and uncle, who are my parents. I had them. My twin brother, on the other hand, went to schools that did not have the same resources that I was afforded, did not have the same opportunities. And so this work for me has always been about breaking those generational cycles of inequity, but also pushing the city of Boston in this moment in time when we're talking about systemic reform to say, yes, we are a world-class city, but we're not a world-class city for everyone. We have a staggering racial wealth gap. We have inequities in our school system, our healthcare system. So we can continue to be a world-class city, but we must make sure it's for everyone. And so my life has always been about the possibilities of our city, the pain of when the city doesn't work for everyone. And I jumped into this mayor's race back in September to say that we have the opportunity to change life outcomes by ensuring we are providing every resident with equal and equitable opportunity.